This is a bit hard to explain, but I really feel like something is off. For context, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder a few years ago, the depressive type. It sort of came out of nowhere. And at first, I was working full-time with a decent job, just trying to make my way in life. But as the symptoms began to worsen, I lost my job, and everything seemed to spiral out of control. Now, I'm in the process of applying for disability, which wasn't where I saw myself going, but I'm doing my best to adjust. It's been a tough road. One of the hardest parts has been finding the right medication, but recently, I've found something that's working really well. My hallucinations have decreased significantly, and for the first time in a while, things started to look up. I've been fortunate to have my wife's support throughout all of this. She's been holding down the fort financially, which is incredibly humbling. But at the same time, it's hard living this way, feeling like I'm a deadbeat husband, watching her work hard for both of us. Her family has never been thrilled with our situation. I can't really blame them for that. It's tense with them, but I try to stay cordial. A few months ago, my wife's sister, Sue, left her husband and came to stay with us. She brought her baby with her, and while I wasn't exactly thrilled about new people moving into our home, I understood the situation. I tried to be accommodating. At first, things were fine between Sue and me. She had been a little nervous around me ever since my diagnosis was made public, especially since when it first came out. She immediately sent my wife a text saying she didn't feel comfortable leaving her kid with me for babysitting anymore. But over time, she seemed to lighten up, and things started to seem normal again. However, that all started to change last month. I began noticing something strange. Every time I walked past Sue when we were alone, I'd hear faint whispers. I couldn't make out what was being said, so I asked her if she'd said anything. She always denied it, which made me second-guess myself. At first, I thought it was just my auditory hallucinations acting up, but the whispers started happening more and more often. And sometimes, when we'd be watching TV together, I'd hear them again. The weird thing was, I couldn't see her mouth move. She'd either be turned away from me, sitting behind me, or even in front of me, but the words were still there. The whispers started to get louder, and I could actually start to make out what they were saying. Words like unalive them all, and as of that that really started to freak me out. My hallucinations had always been rough, but they'd never been like this before. They've always been centered on me, like I hate you or you're a failure. But hearing these words that seemed targeted at something else, it shook me. I was worried that my hallucinations were getting worse, and this made me feel like I was losing control. It got even weirder when I started hearing voices coming from other rooms. It sounded like people talking, but when I'd ask Sue if she heard anything, she would always say no. And the strange part was, the voices didn't sound like my usual hallucinations. My hallucinations have always sounded female, but these voices sounded male. My hallucinations are usually whispers right next to my ear, but these voices sounded like they were coming from another room entirely. The strange thing was, the voices were saying things that sounded eerily like a meme I'd seen on 4chan, where people with schizophrenia are messaged and told that others are hiding in their walls. And that's exactly what I heard in the other room. I thought maybe I was losing my mind, but I needed to be sure. So I started searching for the source of the voices around the house. Sue got scared and started telling my wife that I was going crazy again. I know it looked bad, and it felt like I was spiraling, but the voices didn't match my usual hallucinations. They were different. So I tried to make sure it wasn't something else before I jumped to conclusions. Today, things took a darker turn. My medication, my crucial medication, was missing. I kept it in the kitchen at night. And this morning, it was gone. I didn't know what to think. I asked Sue if she'd seen my medication, and she immediately got scared. She ran to her room with the baby, and shortly after, her parents arrived at the house. They didn't seem hostile, but they blocked my way and took Sue to their place for the day. They also called my wife, telling her that I had been harassing Sue and that I was going crazy. They said they feared for Sue and her baby because of me. I've had trouble with taking my medication in the past when my symptoms were at their worst, but I really liked the medication I was on now. It was working well for me, and I was nervous about not having it for a few days while I waited for more. But the worst part is, I really could be hallucinating all of this. The thing is, hallucinations change over time. If I'm delusional again, how would I even know it? I don't want to scare Sue, but it feels like something's just not right. None of this ever happens when my wife is home, only when it's just me and Sue in the house. I didn't think she'd be capable of manipulating me like this, but everything feels wrong. I just don't know what to do. Everything is starting to feel more surreal with each passing day. The last few days have been a blur. Sue's disappearance from the house hasn't really made things better, though I can't deny that I feel a bit of relief. The medication was hard to get, but I managed to get a refill in just a couple of days, and that's taken the edge off for now. Still, the emotional toll from all this has been draining, and I'm struggling to maintain my sense of reality. When my wife got home, we had a long conversation about what had been happening. I talked to her about Sue, and everything I've experienced, how it all started when Sue moved in. I even let her read my previous post for context. My wife is amazing. She listened to everything I said without judgment, and though I think she was concerned about my mental health, she didn't dismiss me. She acknowledged that it could be all hallucinations. But she also had her own suspicions about Sue. My wife told me that earlier in the week, Sue had sent her a message saying that I wasn't taking my medication. This baffled my wife because I always take my medication in front of her, and she knew I had been doing well for the past few months. She told Sue that I had been fine, and she assumed that Sue was just being paranoid. My wife agreed with me that something didn't seem right, so we searched the house again, hoping to find my missing medication. I was hoping it was just misplaced, but it was gone, completely gone. This confirmed what I had been feeling deep down: something was wrong. My wife didn't like the idea of Sue and her baby being homeless, but she also recognized that it was probably for the best that Sue no longer stay with us. My wife agreed with me that Sue's presence was contributing to the decline of my mental health. She didn't want to risk me going backward, especially after making such progress. When we called Sue's parents to tell them that she wouldn't be staying with us anymore, they were furious. They yelled at my wife for choosing me over family, calling her selfish for making that decision. Sue even called my wife crying, claiming she was going to be homeless. That was tough. Seeing my wife caught between me and her family was heartbreaking. I almost relented, thinking maybe we could let Sue stay with us a little longer. But my wife was firm. She assured me that this was the right decision for all of us, and that it wouldn't be healthy for me or our marriage if we let Sue back in. Things settled down for a couple of days. With Sue gone, I didn't hear the new audio hallucinations anymore. It was such a relief. I still heard my old hallucinations, mostly related to spirits and hauntings, but the new voices and whispers were gone. I felt a little lighter. The tension in the house was starting to fade, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. I called up my doctor and arranged an emergency appointment, which made me feel more confident about moving forward. I was starting to feel like I had some control over my life again, despite everything that had happened. But then, 3 days ago, everything changed again. My wife went to work, and her family showed up at our house. The first thing I noticed was the moving van parked in our driveway. I was immediately on edge. I had no idea what they were planning, but it didn't feel good. I texted my wife to let her know what was happening and answered the door. Her parents stood there, looking at me like I was some kind of monster. Her father came up to me, all aggressive, and told me that, as a family, they had decided I was too unstable to live at home. They told me to pack my things because they were going to have me committed to a psych ward for my own safety. They said it was for the best, that I was too dangerous to stay in the house with Sue and her baby. I was shocked, and I refused to go. I told them I wasn't going anywhere. I was perfectly fine, and this was my house. I was not going to let them take me away. Her mother tried to sweet-talk me, telling me that it was for my own good, and even suggested that I could live with my family until my nephew got older. They were trying to manipulate me, making me think I was doing something wrong by not agreeing. I knew it was all about Sue, and I wasn't about to let her back in the house. I told them flat out, Sue is not staying here. She is not coming back. And this is my house. If you don't leave, I will call the police. That shut them up for a moment. They looked at me like I had just ripped their hearts out. They kept trying to argue, but I wasn't backing down. I reminded them that my brother is my landlord. If I leave, Sue will still not be staying here. I told them that this situation would never end with her living in my home, and that they needed to leave before things got worse. They were stunned into silence, and they didn't know what to say. I think they realized I wasn't the pushover they expected me to be. My wife arrived shortly after, and when she found out what had happened, she was furious. She was upset that her family had tried to go behind her, back to have me committed. She stood by me, though, and told them to stay away from us. I know it's killing her inside that she's been forced to cut ties with her family, but I'm grateful for her support. This whole situation has turned her world upside down, and it's not fair to her, but I'm proud of how she's handling everything. The past few days have been a blur of emotions. I still can't believe how everything escalated so quickly. My wife has been a rock through all of this, but I can tell it's taking a toll on her. She's always been there for me, supporting me through my mental health struggles, but now it feels like her family is trying to tear us apart. I know it's not easy for her to choose between me and them, but I also know she's doing what's best for us. She's standing by me, even though her family is putting her in an impossible position. After that incident with her parents, things were tense for a while. I spent a lot of time second-guessing myself, wondering if I was just imagining everything. If maybe I had misinterpreted Sue's behavior, or if it was all just a result of my illness. The thing is, the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that Sue was deliberately messing with me. The whispers, the voices, and now the medication mysteriously disappearing, it doesn't seem like a coincidence. Sue's behavior has been so erratic, and I can't ignore the fact that it all started when she moved in with us. I can't understand why she would do this to me. If she truly believed I was dangerous, why would she push me to the point of delusion? It doesn't make sense. If she's truly scared, why would she intentionally manipulate my symptoms? It feels like she's trying to make me lose my mind. I don't know if it's jealousy, some kind of power play, or if she's just trying to get what she wants her own way of living in the house, but I feel like I'm being tested in ways that I never asked for. After everything settled down with her family, things seemed to improve for a little while. My hallucinations, the ones I've been tracking with my new medication, were almost non-existent when Sue wasn't around. It was a relief, honestly. I felt like I could breathe again without hearing whispers or voices in the background. But there's still that nagging fear that maybe I'm not seeing the full picture. I keep questioning myself, wondering if I'm just paranoid, or if my delusions are playing tricks on me. Am I just imagining the whole thing? Or is there really something going on here? My wife and I had another long talk about everything that's happened. We agreed that it might be time for a bit of space between me and Sue, for my own mental health, and for the peace of the house. I'm worried about what might happen if she comes back. Will my symptoms get worse again? Can I handle the stress of her being around? But at the same time, I don't want to be a burden on my wife, and I don't want her to feel like she's choosing me over her family. It's a tough situation, and I feel like I'm walking a fine line. I know my wife is doing everything she can to support me, but I also know she's been struggling with her own emotions. It's hard for her to cut ties with her family, especially with her sister and nephew involved. She's been torn between protecting me and keeping her family intact. I don't want to make things harder for her, but at the same time, I need to protect myself. I can't let Sue's actions push me into a deeper mental health crisis, especially when I've been doing so well on my medication lately. Sue hasn't tried to contact us since the last incident, and I think it's better that way. I'm not sure if I'm ready to face her again. Part of me wants to confront her, ask her why she's been messing with me, but I'm afraid it will just escalate everything. The last thing I want to do is make things worse. So for now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. I've been focusing on my recovery, on keeping my symptoms in check, and on making sure my relationship with my wife stays strong. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Sue is still out there, and I'm not sure what she's going to do next. I've been feeling paranoid about her family trying to come back into the picture. They've already shown how far they're willing to go to try and force me out of my own home. I don't trust them, and I don't know how much longer I can keep the peace without feeling like I'm losing control. The one thing that gives me hope right now is my wife. She's been everything to me during all of this. I know it's been hard on her, but she's been my support system through it all. I just hope we can keep pushing through together, because the alternative is too overwhelming to think about. I've seen how her family can be, and I know I can't let them tear us apart.